that biological reality as it relates to sport shows us that there is a clear male advantage when it comes to sport. And what we recognize is the need to put this boundary of male advantage around female sport such that that advantage levels the playing field for females, gives them a competition in which they are competing against other females, and does not allow that male advantage to change the nature of the competition.
The Georgia Senate votes to ban biological males from participating in female sports. Good evening and welcome to day 13 of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. More on today's Senate action coming up. In the show, you'll hear from Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. In a wide-ranging interview, he shares his vision for the year ahead. In other news, Senate Democrats announced a significant move yesterday, calling for a ballot referendum that would allow voters to weigh in on abortion access. We'll hear from the senator behind that initiative. Also hear the lawmaker who spearheaded the heartbeat bill back in 2019. It is now a law restricting most abortions once a heartbeat is detected. We'll have that interview ahead. First, Capitol correspondent Sarah Callis reports on a busy day under the Gold Dome.
Hi, Donna. Today at the Capitol, the House okayed millions of dollars in state funds, and the Senate took up a controversial bill. The House passed the amended fiscal year 2025 budget nearly unanimously. The amended budget adds millions of dollars to the current fiscal year budget to address damage from Hurricane Helene, prison security, and pay for some employees.
It was important to me and to our Speaker that we stick to the timeline of a quick turnaround because this budget contains very important additions, primarily as it relates to Hurricane Helene, and the safety and security of our prisons.
It also gives $68,000 per school for security improvements. The budget was immediately sent to the Senate for their approval. Members also acknowledged Alzheimer's Awareness Day with a touching tribute. Representative Lisa Hagan spoke about her journey as a caregiver for her late father-in-law.
With an estimated 6.9 million Americans living with Alzheimer's, that means there's at least 6.9 million Americans who are caring for them. And most of them are probably not okay, even though they like to put on a good face. So today, as we have visitors from the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer advocates here at the Capitol, I just want to take a minute to recognize the caregivers and remind you that you need to support them when you can, in any way that you can.
Also today, women in the House wore red to recognize Women's Heart Health Day at the Capitol. And another important health-related recognition. Lawmakers celebrated the Morehouse School of Medicine's 50th anniversary.
We are going to continue our work in identifying students who are coming from underserved and underrepresented communities, whether it's our nursing program, our PA program, our MD program, our master's program, our PhD programs. And we're going to convert non-Georgians to Georgians. And we're going to convince them to come and invest and stay in our state, because that's how we know we can increase health care access and achieve health equity.
A controversial bill dealing with a controversial subject made its way to the Senate floor this afternoon. SB 1, the Fair and Safe Athletic Opportunities Act, would ban transgender athletes from competing in female sports at every scholastic level, including banning trans athletes competing in Georgia from other states or private schools. Republicans say it's needed to protect cisgender female athletes.
That biological reality as it relates to sport shows us that there is a clear male advantage when it comes to sport. And what we recognize is the need to put this boundary of male advantage around female sport such that that advantage levels the playing field for females, gives them a competition in which they are competing against other females, and does not allow that male advantage to change the nature of the competition.
Democrats say it does far more harm to transgender children than solving any problem.
I'm voting no on the sports bill today because regardless of what you might have to say about fairness or safety, I know where this bill comes from. This bill comes from exclusionary politics that have a natural endpoint, and that natural endpoint is the erasure of trans people.
Not true, responded Republicans.
There's no attack by anybody in this chamber on you. As the discussions happen in our committee, you're cared for by members, you're cared for and valued by our state, and nothing we do to protect the value of women's sports should be misinterpreted or twisted or bent by the words of those in the minority party to suggest otherwise. We're simply trying to provide a fair shot for young women in sports.
3 Democratic amendments were proposed, including one that would make coaches' pay, facilities, and equipment for female sports equal to boys' sports.
That's what this amendment does. It impacts thousands of girls' lives. And what's more, we know that from statistics, when girls play sports, and particularly when they play for a long time, they grow up to be powerful leaders like the one you see standing in this well today. We know that when girls play sports, they grow up to be CEOs. They are more likely to finish college, more likely to hold leadership positions when girls play sports. This amendment makes sure that girls have a level playing field and increases the likelihood that girls will stay in the game instead of quitting the game because they don't have equal opportunities.
2 other amendments would have removed the grade school requirements. But in the end, all 3 amendments failed to pass. SB 1 was then passed 35-17. With 2 Democrats voting for the bill, and the House's budget bill was received in the Senate, where it will be their turn Monday to put their mark on the appropriations bill. Lawmakers returned to the Capitol on Monday for Day 14. That's all for my Capitol Report. Back to you, Donna.
Thank you, Sarah. I recently sat down for an interview with Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He is in his 3rd year presiding over the Senate and has been advancing his priorities. Yesterday, after the session, he was in Washington for the signing of an executive order banning transgender women and girls from girls' sports. As Sarah reported today, the Georgia Senate took similar action. I started the interview asking him about his support of the legislation.
Well, I mean, it's important as a father, you know, of a teenage daughter who plays a lot of sports, and is also having met many young ladies who have, you know, particularly the young ladies that came to testify from University of Kentucky and the swim team, where they actually competed in the national title here in Atlanta at Georgia Tech, and were unable to place in those swim meets because a young man who was posing as a female athlete ended up winning the national title right there. Those are things that you know, we just really believe in the fact that we need to be protecting girls' sports, and we put it in the hands of the Georgia High School Athletic Association a couple years ago, which is not a good spot to put those unelected officials in, and so we're going to move forward and do it and put it in statute where we're clear about, you know, where we stand on protecting women's sports.
You went through this last year, though. Last year, it made it out of the Senate. It didn't in the House. How are you feeling this year?
I feel good about it. The Speaker has, in the all season, has said that he supports it. Now, I think he supported it last year, but for whatever reason, it didn't get all the way through the House. I think he, as well as his leadership team, is on board with it this year, and so I feel good about it being able to pass.
Okay. Another study committee you had over the summer dealt with child care. Mm-hmm. Talk about that as something that you really care about.
Yeah.
How expensive it is now.
Absolutely. There's no question, you know, child care expenses, like a lot of things, keeps going up, and it's very difficult for working mothers to be able to work full time and try to find good child care for their youngsters. I myself, being a business owner, have seen it firsthand many times. I've lost a lot of good talent because you know, a single mom or a working mother or whatever, or our family, whatever the situation is, you know, have not been able to work full time because either they couldn't afford child care, or, you know, it just was a hardship on them. So we're coming up with a child care tax credit, you know, that will hopefully enable more working mothers to be able to find affordable child care and also be able to fulfill their work desires as well.
Explain how that credit would work.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. How they'd file it on their taxes as far as obviously they'll be able to show that they're have them in a some sort of daycare system and then file it on their taxes and it's a pretty substantial savings for them.
Is there a possibility of anything more direct? You know, some parents are really struggling now.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to try to figure out something direct. We thought the child tax credit would be the best option. However, we're going to go through this legislative process, and if somebody has a better idea or a better way that we can fulfill that obligation a little quicker, then we'll be open to that. But the essence was let's try to put something in place that at least gives them a little hope on being able to have a little financial help in getting it done.
Something else you've been looking at, and that is taking something that they're talking about on the federal level at the state level, and that's DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Talk about how that will work here.
This is something that we introduced last year as far as dealing with our state agencies on the regulatory front. One thing that's always a burden on small businesses, well, small and large businesses, quite frankly, is the cost of doing business and the regulatory structures in the state or local or state regulatory structures. And we're saying that we need to always, because we always add more regulations, but very few times do we take them away. And I think that it's always good for us to do a reset on our regulatory fronts through the state agencies, and that's what this bill would do. It got a lot of attention now because that's something that they're doing on the Trump administration is moving towards doing on the national front. But it was something that we passed out of the Senate last year and got hung in the House last year. But it makes good common sense. I mean, it's just one of those things that why wouldn't you want to reevaluate your regulatory system every 4 years and particularly make your state agencies reevaluate them?
Okay, you talked about a couple of things that were passed in the Senate and didn't make it into the House.
Yeah.
Are the two chambers going to work together better this year?
I guess we're going to work on our relationships a little bit over there, Donna. No, we have a great working relationship with the House and the Speaker. He and I, he started his speakership at the same time I started as Lieutenant Governor, and we've had a great working relationship. Not everything that the House sends to us we've done, and not everything that we send over there to them they've gotten done. But I would say for the majority of issues, we've been able to come up with some common ground, and you're not ever going to agree on everything, so then that's okay, But you can always reevaluate what they don't like, and then try to make those changes, and so I think we'll be fine.
So this is not a honeymoon period at the beginning of the session. This is going to continue all the way through. You guys will be good at the end of.
Oh yeah, it's like a marriage. It's like a marriage, Donna. I mean,
seasons of that.
You got to know when to keep your mouth shut and listen, and then vice versa. Also, you got to state your case too. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be fine. And I'm an easy person to get along with, and so is Speaker Burns.
Anything else you wanted to add that I didn't discuss?
Oh no, I mean, we're looking forward to doing this, getting this session behind us. I know it just started, but our main obligation is to pass the budget and and we've got some issues that we need to address in that budget. Particularly pertaining to Southeast Georgia. That's a big one with the Hurricane Helene and the damages that were done to those counties. So we're going to try to address those situations there, and it's always transportation, education, and access to health care. Those are all the big issues we always tackle, and so we'll be doing something on all those fronts this session here.
I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for that interview. Well, coming up, the debate over abortion rights in Georgia and new legislation from Democrats. Two senators passionate about each side of the issue. Join us. This is Lawmakers on GPB. Perfect. You guys
organization dedicated to preserving Georgia agriculture. Farm Bureau advocates for all Georgia farmers at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
It's good to have everyone back together.
Good news indeed.
Put your feet up a minute. It's beautiful.
How does that sound, being man?
It's what I love doing. Cup of tea.
I was thinking more double whiskey.
Freshly baked biscuits, always.
Well, this is all proving rather cozy, isn't it?
Understanding the past gives a sense of the future. This is the first time that anyone has seen this in 2,000 years.
This is amazing.
Well, I'm excited now.
Pompeii is a battle against time.
You think I'm joking, but look at this. It did really happen.
Don't let anybody tell you who you are.
History teaches us to honor the past.
When you look back, you're like, wow, that was pretty special.
This is something that's actually altering the course of history.
You're charged with keeping these stories alive.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. We're going to look at both sides of the abortion debate with two senators. Joining us is Republican Senator Ed Setzler of R-Acworth. He is chairman of the Senate Committee on Science and Technology. He served in the House from 2005 to 2023 when he became a state senator. And Democratic Senator Sally Harrell of Atlanta. She previously served in the House, but has been in the Senate since 2019. Her Senate committees include government oversight, health and human services, and higher education. Welcome to Lawmakers, to both of you. So I want to offer some history a little bit before we get into this topic at the General Assembly. So in 2019, then House Representative Ed Setzler sponsored House Bill 481, the Living Infants Fairness and Equality, or LIFE Act, known as the Heartbeat Bill. It bans abortions once a doctor can detect a heartbeat in the womb, generally about 6 weeks into a pregnancy. There were protests against the bill, and on the final vote in the House, the legislation passed by just one vote. Governor Brian Kemp later signed it into law, but it didn't take effect because of the federal law protecting abortion access. Fast forward to 2022, when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, and despite legal challenges, the heartbeat law stands in Georgia. So, Chairman Setzler, did I miss anything?
You're right on it, Donna. You're all over it.
All right. Tell me a little bit, in your opinion, how things went in hindsight now, because I was there covering it in 2019.
Well, after 49 years of abortion on demand as a means of elective birth control, the Supreme Court gave back to citizen-elected legislatures the ability to balance the very difficult circumstances women find themselves in with the basic right to life of a living, distinct, unborn child. That balance, we tried to strike the very careful balance. We landed that if a child has a detectable heartbeat, they should be protected from the brutality of abortion.
So you also added something else to that, and that was the personhood. I didn't get into that. Explain that for people who don't understand that.
Well, what our statute did, unlike many other states, is it didn't just focus on the abortion issue. It focused on the humanity of the child. So in Georgia, when moms find themselves pregnant, mom gets child support from dad for health care expenses. Moms and dads get a tax exemption for having a child, having a third member of their family if it's their first child. Throughout Georgia code, we recognize the humanity of the child. Because again, with the abortion question, it's this difficult balance, right? But with when you recognize the humanity of a child, we mean throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, and then again, our state's been very generous with postpartum care. We're looking at it holistically to recognize the humanity of the child as being worthy of full legal protection.
Okay, so Senator Harrell, yes. you were in the Senate in 2019, right?
I was.
You were in the Senate.
Yes.
You just come back.
Yes, it was my first year in the Senate.
Coming back, you'd been in the House the years before. Tell me what your thoughts were looking back on that time.
Well, almost my entire lifetime, Roe versus Wade was in place. So it was really beyond my imagination that we would lose the protection of Roe versus Wade and the ability to seek an abortion. Now we're living with that reality. It's hard.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking now as you move forward. So as I understand it now, yesterday you made an announcement. Talk a little bit about what you'd like to see happen.
Right. So one of the most frequent questions I get from constituents is, why can't we vote on whether or not to protect abortion like other states have? Because other states that have put this on the ballot have had some success. What they don't know is that in Georgia, we have no path to putting things directly on the ballot. So what Senate Resolution 84 does is it seeks to actually amend Georgia's Constitution to enshrine the right to reproductive freedom in our Constitution. That, in essence, would put the question on the ballot, because in order to amend Georgia's Constitution, all voters in Georgia have to vote on that amendment.
And this is something you are sponsoring, but the Democratic Party is behind. Your caucus is behind.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that. I think there was the expectation that something might come up dealing with abortion from Democrats. You guys chose this route. Is there a particular reason?
Sure. So, this fall we got together and the caucus came up with our policy agenda, and reproductive freedom was one of the 5 issues on our agenda. People like to vote on issues. I think people are feeling disappointed in the institution of their elected officials. They're feeling like their voices aren't heard. And I think part of this comes from gerrymandered districts, where legislators draw the district lines in a way that makes their district safe for re-election. And so they can vote on extreme measures and support extreme measures with really no consequence. It's evenly balanced districts, 50-50 districts, that generate discussion and debate. So they're frustrated with the process. They're feeling like their voices are not heard. So it would be, I think, good for democracy to allow people to vote directly on this issue when they go to the ballot to vote.
Okay, your opinion on what she's proposing, taking it to the voters.
Well, it's interesting. When I was the author of the Heartbeat Bill here in Georgia, my district was 48% Donald Trump. It was a very competitive district. I won re-election because the voters in our districts recognize that after 49 years of abortion on demand, the humanity of the child needed to finally be recognized, and that was recognized at the ballot box. I think the issue with voting this statewide is that regular voters can't come to face to face with the brutality and the ugliness of this procedure. I mean, we can't even really talk about abortion because the brutality of it is kind of outside of the realm of polite conversation. If 11 million Georgians could come face to face with what abortion is, this thing you can't even look at, and could see it for its ugliness, it would overwhelmingly be struck down. This would overwhelmingly fail. The concern you have as a legislator is after $50 or $100 million of money, pushing abortion on demand comes into the state to kind of confuse voters, control the language, reframe this brutality to something that you call abortion care. I think the twisting of that makes it very, very difficult for voters to sort through really what they're looking at. If they could come face to face with it, Georgians would overwhelmingly reject this proposition.
It passed by 1 vote. Do you worry that even taking it to the voters that you may not they voted for you and other lawmakers to work on their behalf, but do you think that maybe them looking at it a little bit closer, you may not get the same result?
It's interesting, Donna. If you looked, there's a 2017 Pew Charitable Trust poll that said 38% of Democrats in Georgia believe that abortion should always or almost always be illegal. There were Democrats in both chambers who recognized that protecting life is solid and sound. The difficulty in their party is very difficult to support that, given the party realities. There is a consensus that abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy, as this constitutional amendment proposes, is not where Georgia is. We could debate 6 weeks, we could debate 10 weeks, but where Georgians are in their gut is If there's a heartbeat, the child should be worthy of protection. And I think as people come to terms and recognize the wisdom of what we did in 2019, I think we're seeing support rise gradually. We'll see that over the course of the next couple of years.
Okay. Senator Harrell.
I think the senator underestimates the intelligence of the voters. And I'm not sure where you're getting your numbers either. Every poll that I've seen says that the majority of Georgians do support access to abortion.
Have you had polls at the, I know that sometimes at the ballot box,
there have been plenty of polls.
The parties will do polls.
The polls I've looked at haven't been party polls. Party polls you have to be careful of because how the question is asked can generate the answer that you want. So you have to look for, solid polling. And the polling that I've seen says that the majority of voters do support the right to abortion. And to say that they haven't looked at what you're calling the brutality of abortion, that they haven't looked at the complexity of the issue really, I think, is insulting to the voters.
Yeah. So at this point, I remember back in 2019, it was just kind of you were under the gun in terms of the fire that was coming your way, the protests and all of that kind. You stuck to your beliefs in all of this and came through it. How are you feeling now as you look back on that time and what you did? And at that point, we didn't know Roe versus Wade would be overturned.
Yeah, I think when you think about, that there's thousands and thousands of Georgia families, couples that cry themselves to sleep at night wanting to be able to adopt a child. There weren't enough children to be adopted here. They're adopting kids from all over the world. The idea that adoption now becomes a very real option for people, that abortion on demand as a means of birth control shouldn't be their first choice. And we do give this 6-week window for women. As we balance this, we didn't close that window, but we recognize that when a child has a heartbeat, there's options like adoption, there's options like a parenting plan that can give hope to parents. I think we're seeing people embrace that. Again, these things change gradually over time, but I've been very pleased with the feedback I've gotten from across the spectrum of the experience of this since 2022 when this became legal.
I was thinking about earlier, we had someone on this show talking about gambling. Actually, it was Senator Cardin Summers, and he wants an amendment to go to the people to talk about gambling in Georgia. Why not go that same route?
Well, actually, this is something Sally and I agree with. The idea of a constitutional amendment for a referendum for gambling. She also, I think, opposes the idea of a referendum for casino gambling. Okay. You'd have $50 million of casino money come in to try to tell Georgians how great casino gambling would be. I think we both recognize that's going to twist and bend that reality. I think this idea of abortion on demand would have that same effect. You'd have, the multi-billion-dollar abortion industry fund this. And I don't think most Georgians have come face to face with the ugliness of this in a way that I think over time we'll see. We're seeing public opinion move on this. And I think it was strong in 2019. I think it's even stronger today.
How are you feeling about your chances on this?
Well, I think that very few people in Georgia understand that we don't have direct ballot access. So by putting this bill out there, it's an opportunity to educate them about what their options are in terms of voting, and that if we cannot get the 2/3 vote that is required,
and it has to be 2/3.
It has to be 2/3, which is right. That's a pretty heavy lift. But if they understand that they need that 2/3 vote, then they're going to reach out to their representative and put pressure. What we saw in recent elections is that the states where Trump won that also had ballot referendums on this issue.
We're going to have to leave it at that. Well, I know we won't debate anymore today on this one. Maybe you'll come back. But that does it for Lawmakers Today. Thank you so much for joining us.